Hi, I'm Maurice.
And I'm Carmen. We are part of the Lester B. Pearson School Board and members of the FSSTT. We are so excited about this conversation because today we're diving into the story behind one of the most impactful programs supporting students, families, and schools. It's the Family School Support Treatment Team, better known as FSSTT.
And in a moment, we're going to be all joined together with the three founders who dreamed it, built it, and continue to inspire. We have Dr. Sammy, Mr. Scott Waugh, and Diane McLean.
And together, they've helped redefine what it means to truly support a child, not in isolation, but as part of a whole family and school community.
And this isn't just a program. It's a movement that it's going to change how we think about collaboration, compassion, and care in our schools.
And what better way to tell the story than to hear it straight from the founders themselves, the dreamers, the doers, and believers who made it all happen. Welcome, everyone. Before we dive in, though, can each of you briefly share your role at the time and your connection to the early days? Scott, would you like to start?
My role at the time, at the beginning, really was the coordinator of the team. So I was the only, aside from the 5 behavior resource and the 5 original schools who were technically full-time, I was the only full-time person on the team. So my role really was to, I would spend a day a week in each one of those 5 schools, attending their resource team meetings, etc., and basically preparing for, well, we did problem solving in these resource team meetings, but then we would also prepare for consults, whether they be type 2 or type 3. And so that my role was to facilitate that process.
And Diane, what was your role at the time?
My role was as the director of student services. So
Okay.
within that role, I was responsible for services for students with special needs. And
Perfect.
there was a paucity of services for students who experience social emotional challenges. And we were able to access 2 or 3 hospital programs for a very limited number of students. So only a handful of students whose parents were in agreement and would participate. So it was a very small number, but not only that, it was not satisfactory in totality, because this meant that we were sending the most vulnerable students away from the natural resources and attachments of their community. Students, for the most part, who had already had experienced a lot of upheaval, disrupted attachment, and they were really in need of stability, unconditional acceptance, and we were sending them off, and the onus then was on them. You needed to go, and the intervention obviously was helpful to a degree for them and for the families who were participating, but then they were returning to us. And in the same environment, under the same conditions, once again, with the onus on them to sort of carry the weight, we were still not, we had not increased our understanding or our readiness or created a more therapeutic environment. So to build capacity, if we were not going to, if that was the only thing that we were going to do. And at that time, our professionals were very fortunate to have regular consultation. Scott was part of that group with Dr. Sammy on a regular basis, and that was very helpful for us in terms of particular students. So as professionals, we could go back to the schools, and that helped with each individual scenario and our understanding to a degree. But what we realized was we needed to bring that we were receiving through consultation with Dr. Sammy and the intervention in helping us create a more therapeutic environment to the front line, to the school.
So what did that conversation sound like? So like, how did you get together? With all three of you get together and decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is a plan that something has to change. We've got to do something completely different. There's no program out there that can support us. So let's come up with something. What did that conversation sound like? Who approached who? Dr. Sammy was involved, obviously. So how did all three of you come together
Well,
to make this happen?
my understanding is that Diane had reached out to Klaus Minzi, who was director of the child psychiatry department at the Montreal Children's Hospital, and I was the director of the West Island team. And there was no child psychiatric services anywhere in the West Island, the whole of West Island. There was no child psychiatric services. Families had to go downtown and to the Montreal Children's Hospital and stay on the waiting list. So it's the excitement of it. And I think what makes it unique is that as a child psychiatrist, the team had to invent it, to create it from scratch. There was no previous model to follow. And its vision was innovative in many ways. The idea of bringing medical, psychiatric, and psychological care where the child is was taking the integrative philosophy one step further, bridging family and school, but also mental health and psychiatric care. And last but not least, to create a structure of care based on behavioral specialists that were present in the schools, in the classrooms, that we call the birds. It is a structure from bottom up rather than the usual opposite. And this was making it extremely exciting and extremely challenging. And I still remember the enthusiasm, I mean, the pleasure, the absolute total pleasure of us being involved in this wonderful, crazy and wonderful project. And I still feel it. I still feel this kind of pleasure in creating something new that is meaningful.
I must say, Dr. Sammy mentioned, and that is how it began, that I approached Dr. Klaus Mindy at the hospital. And we spoke about how we could develop something of bringing this to the community, something in the community, in the school, to create therapeutic environments. And so the discussion took place over several meetings, obviously. And at one point in the meeting, one time, and I gave kind of just an overview of it was developed once we began. Like, I didn't have a model in mind, but I did know that we needed someone to coordinate, someone to be at the school level. We needed to build capacity. We needed to get to frontline teachers. We needed to create a more therapeutic environment. We needed to increase our understanding. And the coordinating person would be key. And Dr. Mindy said to me, well, if you're going to have a coordinator, he started to give me, tips which were totally on, but you need to have a person who is flexible, person's understanding, a person who will think outside the box and this sort of thing. He didn't have to finish. I said to him, I already have the person in mind. I know who I want to do this, and it was Scott. But that his name, I spoke his name to Dr. Mindy when we were in a meeting at the hospital. I just knew that was, and I think thinking outside the box and doing whatever it takes to make it happen was what we needed.
One of the things we were wondering about, we were curious, is where the name FSSTT came from. What was that conversation, and how did that acronym get created?
Well, I do remember exactly. Diane and myself and Munir were sitting around at Scenery School, because that's where our offices were at the time, sitting around a table, and we had been, trying to work through what are we doing here? I mean, we knew what we were doing, but who does it involve? And we just put these things down on paper, like, okay, well, it's family, it's school, support, and treatment. So that's where it came from. Really, we didn't really spend a lot of time on that. I think we might have spent 20 minutes, you know,
Wow.
and figured, no, I mean, that's what we're doing. So that's where it kind of came from.
Thank you.
And
Well,
go ahead, Dr. Sammy. You were going to add?
well, it's well, I still have to work hard, to say FSSTT. But in retrospect, the acronym makes it special, makes it unique in many ways. And maybe because, we do have an unconscious. And so maybe unconsciously or subliminally, there is something about the SS and TT that links together family and school as well as support and treatment. So the fact that it lasted for 30 years means that it's working. Yeah.
It definitely is working. And I have to say, FSSTT is a tongue twister. And to this day, we still have people asking, are there two S's or three S's and two T's? Three T's? Like, it's still something that people stumble upon. Just 30 years later, we're
Yes,
still confused
yes.
as to how many S's and how many T's.
Well, then they won't forget about it.
Oh, they do not forget us. That is for sure. What is it that makes FSST and this model so unique and so different from what existed at the time? Scott, I know your style of teaching. I actually know your daughter.
Right.
I know your passion, but I could imagine that a bit of this existed in who you were as a human being, but as a program, what is it that this model had that no other schools had?
I think what it did really was increase capacity, as Diane had said, what ultimately we were trying to do. But in the big picture, too, we were really trying to alter people's perceptions of the child. Because quite often, the teacher's perceptions or adults' perceptions became very negative, and they painted a negative picture of that particular individual. And we really needed to somehow change that perception. And I can give you a concrete example. Dr. Sammy came to a consult. This is in our very first year at one of our original 5 schools. There was a family with 3 boys, single mother. The parents were not living together. The father was in New York City working on construction, and the mother lived in here with 3 boys. The 2 older boys didn't present a great deal of difficulty, but the youngest one was a real challenge, and it was constant, and to the point where he was driving the school crazy, and it was real. And so we had a consult with Dr. Sammy, and he came and listened to, usually the consults lasted a couple of hours. And at the end of the consult, Dr. Sammy said, this child's pain is the emotional distance between here and New York City.
Yes.
Okay. And that, see, a statement like that, and this is where we really needed psychiatry, a statement like that really altered the perception of the teachers around their perception of the child. Because all of a sudden they had insight, which we would not have had without Dr. Sammy's input around that. So that changed the teachers' perceptions around this child. And then we move forward from there. So from that, just the kinds of interventions. what I did, I called, post consult, I called mother because she knew we were consulting, and because she wanted this fixed too, because she's trying to go to work and her son's getting kicked out of school every 5 minutes, and this wasn't working for her either. And so I called her and I said, especially after that insight from Dr. Sammy, I said, would you give us permission to get in contact with this youngster's father? And she said, of course. I said, does he want to be involved? Does he, whatever? And she said, yes, he'll do whatever. So I got permission to call the father in New York and explain who I was and what we were hoping for here. Excuse me, I'm just going to turn my phone off. What we were hoping for there, and basically what we did, we set up a telephone communication with father from the school every week. So now I can't remember if it was a couple of times a week in the beginning to once a week, or the frequency doesn't really matter a great deal. But the point was, father was totally open, and we would make the phone call from the school. So the father and the son could have a conversation. And anyway, and this was a really challenging case. And the reality was, though, over a period of time, things didn't change overnight, but this boy's behavior totally changed. Totally changed.
Wow.
I remember that very well. And I remember Dr. Sammy's statement in that case conference about the emotional distance being equivalent to the distance between Montreal and New York. I remember it very well. And this so links to building capacity through understanding.
Well, these examples really speak to the fact that what makes it therapeutic, it's the music and not the words. And that's the spirit. From my end, I always thought that society tended to over-individualize the child. And I always believed in the family very, very, very strongly. I believed in the ability to have self-dependence, the ability to have trust, and I always believed in the human environment of the child, which some 40 years ago, I called the aquarium, and I always used the metaphor of the aquarium, that children are like fish in an aquarium, and the aquarium had to adapt to the fish rather than the other way around. In other words, when a child has a problem in school or whatever, that it is the adults to change first. Whereas the natural demand was that the child had to do this and the child had to do that. So working with families, working with schools, working with communities, I was always interested actually in community consultations.
Dr. Sammy, we have a question for you. If FSSTT were a person, what do you think their personality would be like?
Well, the FSSTT is the combination of all the people that make it. If SSTT was a person, it would definitely be a fun, queer, non-binary person, a free, independent, thinking individual with an unconditional passion for the well-being of children. This is how it's seen. So it's Diane, it's Scott, it's me, and it's all the birds that rotated on the West Island team for a whole year, and with whom we had developed a wonderful relationship and a friendship. It would naturally be a psychological parental figure that attends to the inner world of the child, and this is for people to see the invisible, for people to see the inner world, loving, authentic, indispensable to the life of the child. And clearly, and I think you see is from this conversation that we're having, that it would be an adult who remembers having been a child.
Mm. Well
Because
said.
adults who forgot that once they've been a child are sad.
Well said.
They are
Yes.
sad adults. So it would definitely be a child connected with
Interesting.
something about childhood within that was never forgotten.
And on that, just to piggyback on your answer, can you share a moment that captures that spirit of FSSTT? Just
Uh,
a story or
there were many, you know, in the mid 90s, the whole Quebec was torn with the second referendum, and we weren't all on the same sides, and somehow we were able to laugh about it, and we were able to carry on, and it was, you know, this ability to transcend dividers or differences and carry on. It's as if they were not important, where the rest of the society was making a big deal out of it because we had a higher order purpose. We had a higher order connection together. And it's not that we did with it. We were actually having fun. We were actually kind of, you know, it was endearing, you know, rather than creating the slightest conflict. So you know, I mean, when I think about that, we were somehow like a family,
Mm.
you know, with you know, but a family that, you know, it's not differences in how we think or our choices or whatever, you know, that's gonna make a difference, or that's gonna create this light. So this is one of the moments. There are lots of fun moments, you know. So there were a lot. We were playing. It was work, and it was meaningful work, and it was, I would not say difficult, but challenging work,
Mm.
because we had to create a model respecting the medical model, the school model, confidentiality, and so on and so forth, and the different disciplines and so on. But it was also play. As we were working, we were playing. I don't have the feeling that I worked a single day. It was playful, and that's
That's
And
magic.
I think the other thing too, Munir, like you had mentioned family, and I think one of the really key things that comes to mind for me is the interconnectedness of the team. Like we all supported each other 24/7. So despite the fact that we might have been working a little bit on our own, we were never disconnected. We were always connected to each other. Like we were connected to the behavior resource in the school. We met with them they weren't working there in isolation.
mm-hmm.
We were all connected, and so it was very much like a family. And we all met, like, aside from the consults, like the support of the behavior resource, we met every week after school, and talked about our challenges and talked about our experiences and what worked and what didn't work. And so we weren't working in isolation, even though we might be working alone sometimes. We were working connected with other members of the team all the time. I think
And we
that was
still do.
Yeah,
yeah, that's huge.
this is so true, because one of the elements of the present system is people working in silos.
Mm.
So an example of that is for not only me going to the schools, but also the birds coming to the hospital every week and being part of the team, part of the West Island team, in having a direct access with all the parameters that it means of a medical service, medical psychiatric services, attending the team meetings, case discussions, the
Oh,
evaluation of new families, and so on and so forth. And when I put myself in the shoes of these birds, we call them the birds, with all, coming on the team and sitting on the team for a whole year, and being part of the team and experiencing what it is like, that end of the psychiatric care, that end of working with children and families. So uh, this is also thinking outside of the box and breaking the silos to work together.
no, we should. We don't do that anymore, but we do have pods where the team, we meet within our own pods and we support each other.
Well,
fantastic.
yes, things have changed, unfortunately, at the
Yeah.
Children's Hospital. Yeah. But
Uh,
that extra thing, in other words, the this attending to the inner world of the child, it has a name. It's called love.
Yeah.
Whether it is analytic love, psychiatric love, educational love, teacher's love, and that love makes your job more meaningful. It's an antidote to burnout. So you're more than just making a living, or you're more than just teaching math or teaching French or English. It makes it more meaningful.
Dr.
I
Sammy, you're
recall
very
Dr.
poetic. Go ahead, Diane.
I was just going to say, I recall, just adding to what Dr. Sammy has just said, I recall Dr. Sammy frequently referring to the psychological parent, or who is the psychological parent here? Is there a psychological parent? That was a very important aspect.
And yet it's so simple, but it's something that we keep missing. Even today, you should have been a poet, Dr. Sammy.
Oh.
Well said. Well said. Well, looking back, what feels like the most meaningful impact FSST has had on students and families? You've mentioned schools, but on students and families, and of course you can add schools, but what was the most meaningful impact that you saw, or that you can talk about?
For me, I think it goes back to altering teachers' perceptions, developing relationships with families, because all of those things are everything. For developing as I told you, one of the parents, I used to have to take him to the school because he was afraid to go. And I would go, and he would call me his lawyer, but it was because he didn't feel safe.
Oh,
and he really he would go with me, but he dreaded a call from the school because all it was negativity. And in this particular case, I remember going to a meeting with him, and the administrators spoke for 15-20 minutes about his son. And then I looked at him. Father had not said a word. I looked at the father and I said, "Sir, you haven't had a chance to say anything." And he looked and he said, "I have nothing to say," and then went on to speak for half an hour. But nobody had given him permission to speak.
no one, right.
Thank you all for this summary and this history of FSSTT. But we're wondering about some future things as well. So where could you envision it going in the future?
Well, 30 years later, clearly it became more and more impossible to ignore the mental health of children and adolescents. I mean, all the studies, all the recent studies indicate the extent to which youth are suffering, are distressed, and demonstrated by the very high prevalence of anxiety, depression, addictions, dissociative symptoms. I mean, due to social media, which paradoxically has increased the sense of aloneness in these children, lack of connectedness that Scott was speaking about, family disruptions, world issues, climate change. Talk about eco anxiety, pandemic, declining democracy, rising populism, wars. So the aquarium of our children is leaking right and left. and it became impossible, to my mind, to ignore their inner world, to ignore their mental health, to ignore the fact that they are not only learners on a school bench, but they are people. And that they need to be attended as a total person with emotional needs for them to be able to learn. So I think the FSSTT could be a model. I think it should be present everywhere.
In every school.
In every school.
So, and if every school could adopt one thing from this model for future schools and even school boards, what would you hope it would be?
For me, it would be teaming. Like, first of all, nobody can do this by themselves. And I remember telling all our team members that many times. Like, this job is too big to carry on your own. Like, you really need support. You need team. The in-school team is so important.
I agree.
I,
Diane, do you want
I,
to? Oh, Dr.
yeah,
Sammy?
what Scott just said, I think is absolutely correct. I think it is exactly for me the most important person, and this is what makes it organic. It's what I call the molecular aspect. It's the family extended. It is the system theory. Yeah? It's the family extended to the total environment of the child. So nobody, not a single child in the school, nor any teacher, nor resource team, nobody in a school is a bystander. Nobody is a bystander. It's a system. And when I said every school has a personality, I mean you enter into that organic system, which has to be alive, which has to be teaming, which has to work together. And if not, the child feels it. The
Oh,
child has the
yes.
inner radar to feel it and to and the child will act out what is missing in the system or what is not functioning in the system. Uh, so the teacher must feel that he has the backup, that he's not alone, as Scott. It's not something that you could do alone without the support, not only administrative support, but the total, the teaming, as Scott said it, which makes it organic, which makes it live, which makes it like it's not a machine. It's something that's alive, that can adapt, that can tolerate, that can prioritize, that can evolve, that can change, and that can follow the child, in which the child can grow and learn and develop relationships.
Diane, do you want to?
I just totally agree with what Scott and Dr. Sammy have said. And when you want to look at it in terms of organizing it, you have, except for the psychiatric expertise, the elements that are there. You must convince your organization the necessity of continuing with the psychiatric expertise. But within the organization, it's true that the administrator, the other support professionals on the team are critical. But that all can be nurtured and worked on through professional development. Professional development is an ongoing professional development is absolutely critical to this model. And when Dr. Sammy talks about the birds going and being part of the team at the children's, also Dr. Sammy, I know, gave other sessions with them that were not at the hospital with them, but that continuous nurturing and professional development is critical for every member of the school. But and the lecture series that went on for years, where people would those were invaluable, and so professional development is a huge part of this. You can't build capacity without it because you don't increase your understanding.
But did you ever think that you would be on a podcast 30 years later talking about the birth of FSSTT?
We didn't know whether we were going to exist after year 3. It's true.
Well,
we were going a year at a time, really.
That's right.
Well, it's come a long way.
Well, when I created the Aquarium Foundation, and it was a very, very difficult and long process, and it took 3 different lawyer firms to finally get the registration, the official registration, to issue tax receipts and so on. But one of the things that the government wanted to know is if I had the capacity to direct such a foundation. So the lawyer Googled my name, and I remember, and here came the FSSTT.
Oh.
And as one of the co-founders of the FSSTT, and sent it to the government, and the government said, "Okay, fine, we give you the registration." So,
impressive.
And yes, and just for the anecdote, in 2025, the Aquarium Foundation, but also probably other things, merited the coronation medal of King Charles III.
Oh,
yes. So which I have here,
feel free to go. Feel free to go get it.
No, I don't.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, that is just so wonderful. And I'm interested to hear that the FSSTT, I'm sure it's part of a litany of what they found on Google. I mean, you have Doctors Without Borders, you have all kinds of that Dr. Sammy has been part of. So it's really lovely to hear the FSSTT may have had a little part in that.
I owe to the FSSTT so many wonderful things. And the people, I think on top of it is people like Scott and Diane and all the other people, including Mahitab, who also rotated on my team, actually, at the Children's Hospital. Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, what an amazing story. What an amazing story.
Thank you for telling us all about this journey.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap this up, I'm wondering if you could just all share one final thought.
Continue what you're doing.
Diane,
And
Yes,
step out of the box.
absolutely. Keep the vision. Absolutely.
Dr. Sammy?
Well, whoever loved a child is immortal. And I am moved with a feeling of generativity to see that 30 years later, they are young people like you, doing exactly what you're doing, and continuing with the same spirit, with the same love, with the same meaning. So this is, I'm grateful. I think it's a sense of gratitude. It's very,
Thank you.
very, this is hope
Yes.
to see you on screen and wanting to do this podcast. So
It's very important
podcast,
work.
this is how it's called, podcast.
It's a podcast, yes.
Yeah, it didn't exist at the time. Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you, really thank you for sharing the story behind FSSTT. There are so many that don't know the birth, why it happened, why it was necessary, and to have that vision and the courage to build something that has impacted so many students, so many families, and so many schools, including teachers and administrators who still want to bring us into their schools when they don't have FSSTT. So I want to thank you for sharing that story.
And to everyone listening
you.
to this podcast, I want to thank everyone here just for being here today. And I hope today's conversation will continue to inspire and continue to create spaces for the themes that we discussed, like belonging and creating and collaborating in the schools.